Aloha. Aloha, and thank you for that kind introduction. Welcome, everybody. This is going to be a fairly casual presentation, and I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So, oops, sorry. So I want to start by saying thank you to our sponsors, the Augustine Educational Foundation, as well as Sacred Hearts Academy, and to Laurel Oshiro, who is kind of the mastermind behind the whole conference and has worked really hard to create this opportunity for all of us. My name is Caitlin Ramirez, and this is a little bit about me and my background. I'm started my career as an English teacher and a literacy coach at Kalakaua Middle School a long time ago. And then I transitioned about 5 years ago to being a librarian at Mokapu Elementary School. And my interests as a librarian are promoting literacy, building communities of learners and readers. And then I also teach language arts and health for the DOE eSchool. And I've done that for several years, and it's been a wonderful addition to my in-person learning and teaching. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about different digital text formats and access models, and talk about some of the reasons why I encourage students to access digital text and why I use them a lot in my own reading practice, as well as in my teaching practice. And then I'm going to share, the bulk of our time is going to be spent looking at and talking about some sources for digital text. So I wanted to include a few quotations about digital text because oftentimes I find that people are a little resistant and think that reading ebooks and audiobooks is sort of less valuable than reading print books. And J.K. Rowling said, we should be delighted people still want to read, be it on a Kindle or a Nook or whatever the latest device is. And that really captures my attitude, is really like, I want people to read. And whether they're reading in a print book or they're reading on a device or they're listening to an audiobook, that's all reading, and it all counts and it's all worthy. So I want to start by talking about some of the digital text formats that you will find on some of the platforms that I'm going to share. Ebooks, I'm sure you're all familiar with, are digital versions of print books. You turn the pages and read the print just as you would with a print book. There are also read-alongs, and read-alongs are generally for very young children, pre-K to early elementary, and they're usually picture books. Generally what happens is it will show you the illustration and the text, and then there will be a voiceover that is reading the text out loud. And oftentimes with read-alongs, you can either choose to play the narration and the audio component, or you can choose to just read the print without having the audio component. And I think read-alongs are really great as well, especially for our younger readers or for struggling readers. They can be a way for them to access great books as they build their skills. Personally, I am a huge fan of audiobooks. I have two kids. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and oh no, he's 9 now. But anyway, I just really don't have a lot of time to sit down and read, or I don't make the time to sit down and read. The only time I really read print books these days is when I'm on an airplane. I love audiobooks because I can read all the time. I read when I'm doing the dishes. I read when I'm, taking a walk. And actually, I read a lot with my 9-year-old. We listen to audiobooks together, and it's a great way to share a book when I don't have to be reading it for him, which is wonderful, but it's also tiring. And as a librarian and as a teacher, we spend all day kind of reading. And so it's nice to be able to turn on an audiobook and be a listener. And I've actually used audiobooks in the classroom as well. And what's nice about that is it kind of puts you on the same side of the book as the students. And it's nice to share that side with them. Animated read alouds are also really cool kinds of digital texts. If you are familiar with Storyline Online, you'll see the more current videos are examples of animated read alouds. And what those are they're texts that take the illustrations and they animate them, not necessarily like a cartoon, but they'll move different components of it. And so they kind of bring the story to life, but still in a very kind of bookish, readerly way. It's kind of a halfway point between a cartoon and an illustration. And then also I want to give a shout out to read aloud videos. YouTube is a really great source for read alouds. And I think that these have a real place in our portfolio of digital text formats. And this is, you know, of course, a recording of a person who will read a book out loud. And sometimes you will actually see the person and you'll see them holding the book up. And it's a very sort of conventional read aloud. And then sometimes that it will just show the screencast of the book, and or it will show a projector, you know, kind of capturing the book pages, and you won't see the reader. But I consider those also a type of digital text. I also do want to share a couple of access models that I think it's important to understand when you are exploring using digital text, because they can cause frustration, I think, if you aren't aware of them. So the single user access is kind of it's like a traditional library model of digital text usage. So what it means is that there is a copy of a digital text, and that copy is checked out to one user at a time. And so if I go to the Hawaii State Public Library and borrow a book from their digital collection, then another user cannot borrow that particular copy. And I can put a hold on it, but I may have to wait for it. And I think that is something that a lot of students don't always understand. They think because they're more used to kind of the web and using websites, that it's multiple simultaneous user. And that's just not the way a lot of library collections and digital collections work. So the other model, of course, is multiple simultaneous user. And this works a lot better, I think, with younger users, because they don't have to wait for text, because, you know, no matter how many kids you have, you can all open that book at the same time and read it across multiple devices. So I think it's useful to kind of know which access style you're working with, so that you aren't taken by surprise, and so that you can kind of prepare your students for that as well. And they know that they may have to wait for books that they want. I will also say that when you're working with single user access models, like our shared collection in the public school system or Hawaii State Public Library system, it is useful to put holds on books, because the people who are purchasing those books often look at the list of people who are waiting for books, and they will purchase more copies for very popular books. So I would encourage students and users to go ahead and put holds on books that you want, in the hopes that, you know, more copies will be bought. So here's another quote that spoke to me. I love Douglas Adams, and he says, or said, lovers of print are simply confusing the plate for the food. And, you know, again, I think we really need to encourage our kids and our readers not to necessarily replace reading print books with digital text, but to expand how they read and to find the ways that they access the information and the stories and the text that they want in the ways that work for them. And just a note about audiobooks. I really am I've already said that I'm a audiobook listener, but I also really encourage people to listen to audiobooks, and I consider it reading. It doesn't necessarily help with print, your ability to like read print, and that is a necessary skill that people need to have. But there are also a lot of components to reading that are about more than just recognizing the word on the page. So for example, a lot of sort of comprehension skills happen in your head, and you still need these comprehension skills when you're listening to an audiobook, and it's a good way to practice those as well. When you read an audiobook, you are still building background knowledge, which is a really great thing that reading does for us. So I really, I think that audiobooks do support our readers and are a valid form of reading. Also, what I really like about audiobooks is that sometimes as a teacher, you have students whose age doesn't match their reading ability. And if you give them books that they can actually read, they're not going to be engaged in them because the content is kind of below their emotional developmental stage. So for example, if you have a middle school reader who is reading at an elementary school level, they may not be interested in reading picture books, even though those are the types of texts that they can sort of decode and the level of vocabulary and syntax that they know how to manage. So audiobooks allow them to read Harry Potter, what their peers are reading, and where they get to join in and hear those stories and hear those characters who are really at the same age as them. So I think that's a real benefit of audiobooks. And then the other thing that's really great about audiobooks is that it allows readers to hear the authentic voice of the characters or of the author themselves. So I had an experience recently that was a teacher at my school wanted to share the book. I believe it was Ghost, which is by Jason Reynolds. And Jason Reynolds is a Black man. And the character of this book is about a young Black kid, a boy, who is growing up in an urban environment. And the teacher who wanted to share this book is an older white woman living in Hawaii. And so there's a mismatch between her speaking voice and the authentic sort of voice of the author and the character. And so what audiobooks do is they allow us to hear different voices and hear authentic voices sharing their own stories. And also the authors sometimes read their own stories, and you get this really intimate connection with the author when you listen to them read their own stories. I think some benefits to ebooks, you have immediate access to texts. It allows students to kind of navigate independently. So for example, I have a 5-year-old, and I can put him onto a platform I'm going to show you, which is called GitEpic, and he can sort of go through GitEpic and he can find his own reading material and decide, what book he wants to read, and if he wants to read it the whole way, and if he wants to read it 5 times, which he often does, he has that independence to do so. Ebooks are also discrete. So if you have a topic that you're reading about that you may not want to share with the world, or if you're reading at a different level, and you don't want to sort of share that your reading level with the world, you can read on an ebook and everybody doesn't know what you're reading, and that can be, good for some readers. Also, ebooks have added features that can be helpful. They can define, you can click on words and they will define the words. You can add annotations, that kind of those features, and that can be helpful for readers as well. Read aloud videos. I said those also, I believe those are reading. I really think that they support reading development. They help readers with fluency and expression, and they are engaging to students, and they help them enjoy reading. And again, you have immediate access to books. So I use read aloud videos often as a tool when I'm trying to choose to purchase books for our library. I will look at the read aloud videos to see if that's would be a good fit for our library, or if I need it for a particular lesson or activity and I don't have it in hand, it can be very useful. I do want to mention that there are some drawbacks to digital text. Kids do spend more time on devices if they're using digital texts, and there's just sort of no way around that. And so right now, when kids are on devices all the time, you just may be reluctant to have your kids read on a device too. There's an access issue. If your students don't have devices, or if they don't have the credentials like a library card that they need, that can be a problem that you need to overcome. And then also, I think that it can be just when you're on a screen, kids can get distracted. It's easy to click into a social media site, or something else that they want to use, and so it can be distracting to be on the screen, on screens. And then also deception might be an issue. I think you have to have a conversation with your readers about, when we're reading, I expect you to be reading, and about, how, you give them that freedom. And there are, other ways to kind of monitor student usage on screens if they're needed. But I think the first step is to really establish, what the expectations are, and then monitor student choices and continue to have those conversations about, when they're on screen and they're expected to be reading, that's what they're doing. Okay, one more quote for you. Books are no more threatened by Kindle than stairs are by elevators. The print is still robust. I don't think that digital texts are going to replace print books anytime soon. Lots of people still love and use print, and print has a lot of advantages that digital doesn't. So I think what we are finding is that digital texts are really just expanding access and expanding the reading environment, and that's a good thing. So we're going to spend the rest of our time talking about different platforms that I would recommend that you use and that your students or your readers use. The first one I want to start with is the Hawaii State Library. You can use it through the website, and you can also use it through the Libby app, and that would work on tablets or on phones. It does require that you have a library card. Your personal identification number is the last four digits of the phone number that you gave when you signed up for the library card. So if you have a library card and you don't know what your PIN is, you can try your phone number and see if that works. Otherwise, you can contact your local branch and see if they can help you with that. Some advantages to this system: it's free. What I love, so I am really bad about returning my library books on time. And when I grew up, the library that I went to never gave me any late fees. And now, I just have paid a lot of money in late fees to the public library. So I really appreciate the fact that when I use ebooks and audiobooks, they get returned automatically, and I'm not responsible for returning them on time. Some of the downsides of using the Hawaii State Public Library system is that there are long wait times for new or popular books. So if you need something right away, that might be an issue. I also think that this resource is best for middle, high school, and adult users because it follows that single user access model. And so younger kids might get frustrated trying to, check out a book when it's not available. Also, the interface is not really user friendly. Even for middle and high school students, you would have to give some instruction about how to, how to access the books. That's true if you're using the Hawaii State Public Library website. Now, if you're using Libby, Libby is actually pretty user friendly. And I think if you have like a middle or high school student who's using their tablet or their phone to access these, once they put Libby on there, they're going to be able to figure that out. And I can just show you what Libby looks like. And Debbie, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see that? Okay, great. Thank you. So this is what Libby looks like. You can kind of scroll down and you'll see that there are different collections. There's lots of ways of searching on here, and it is this graphic interface. So that is kind of helpful. So it's worth kind of spending some time on here, but I think people will kind of pick it up pretty quickly. And you can click over, I'll show you what's on my personal bookshelf. Right now I have Brother's Keeper on there, but you can also look at your holds and your tags, and then you can go back to the library. So this is a pretty user-friendly interface. Now I actually use Overdrive, which is it's from the same company, and it's an older app that was used to access the digital collection. So some of you may be familiar with Overdrive, and that's kind of the parent company. The newer public library app is Libby, and you may want to transition over to that new app, or you might just stay on Overdrive. It works for me. So, if you are fine with it, then there's no need to transition. But if you're introducing new users to it, I would use the Libby app. So the next platform is very similar. So this is Sora. And this is the platform that the public schools use for our shared ebook collection. And the ebook collection that we have in our public schools is shared across the whole state. And it's free to teachers and students, and there's multiple levels of access to the shared collection. All of our schools have access to sort of a base collection, and then schools can choose to subscribe to a much larger collection, and the base collection is limited. So if your school doesn't subscribe to the larger subscription collection, you may find this of limited use. And I would encourage you to talk to folks at the school, whoever if you have a librarian, I would talk to them about it. If you have, if you don't have a librarian, then you would need to talk to a reading coordinator or a curriculum coordinator to see if you could get that higher level of subscription. And that will really open up a whole range of texts that you just don't have access to at that base level. The third level is it's for like if your school wants to buy like textbooks and have like collections of the same books that students are going to use for courses and that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that. Sora also, it's part of the same family as Libby. So I'll show you the interface in a minute, and you'll see it looks very similar to Libby. It's specifically for school libraries though. And what's nice about Sora, of course, versus the public library is that the books are mostly for kids in K-12 schools. There are some professional texts. And of course, when you're talking about high schools, the line between young adult and adult gets blurred a little bit. The good news is that students don't have access to books that are not classified for their level. So like elementary school students do not have access to high school level books. So you don't have to worry about them finding inappropriate content on there. Just like with the public library, you do have long wait times for new or popular books. And I introduce this usually at like 3rd grade, because the interface is not great for lower elementary. but it's a great tool like to share with your parents, because parents could help students navigate through it. And then also you can introduce it to the teachers, and it's really great as a teaching tool. I almost always, especially in now when we're teaching distance learning, I almost always use digital text like ebooks, because it's so much easier than like trying to hold up a print book and read it and interact with the students and manipulate the computer. So I think this is a really good resource for teachers as well, if you want to do read alouds. And then also the students can see the pictures really clearly, which is nicer than if you're trying to hold up the book and kind of show them the pictures and everything. So real quick, this is what Sora looks like. And you can see it looks just like Libby, basically. And there's multiple ways to kind of find content on here. And the thing that's different, I'm on the Explore section. You can go to the Shelf section and see what you have borrowed. And then also there is a Me section, and the other component that is a part of Sora that's not on Libby is they have badges. So if you have kids who respond to badges and you like to track that and stuff, there is that badge system, which can be a useful way to get kids onto the platform and utilizing it and stuff. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention too is that there is a sort of a way to toggle between your school and the public library. So for me on my phone, which is where I put a lot of my audiobooks, you can add multiple libraries. And so you can borrow from multiple libraries and kind of access them easily. And that's kind of a nice feature that I use a lot. So the next platform I want to share with you, I happen to love it. Not everybody, some people have reservations about it, but I really like it a lot. It's called GitEpic.com, and it's this sort of hybrid between a free resource, but also a subscription, sort of Netflix for digital books kind of thing, where you pay a monthly fee and have access to it. So the way that it works is that an educator can set up an account, and then once you set up an account, you can add students to your class. And then it will be free to your students during school hours. So between the hours, I think it's like 7 to 4 or 6 to 4 or something like that, they will be able to access content. Now, after school hours are over, they won't be able to access those books anymore unless they pay for a subscription, and then they'll have 24-hour access. So, you have to think about how you use it. During distance learning, it's really great because kids at home can use it during the day. But it could also be like a center in a classroom, or it could be an activity that kids do during the school day. What I love about GitEpic is that it's really easy for kids to navigate. There's no wait times for books because it's that multiple simultaneous user model. And so you can have, a dozen kids on it at the same time, and they can all be reading the same book if they want, because it's not a library model where they're checking the book out. They're just using it on that platform. What's also really nice about it is that it can provide valuable student reading data. So it will tell you like how often the kids have read. I think you can assign books to them. I create reading lists, and I share reading lists with my students on certain topics, which is really nice. And actually, so we don't have, I think, an information sharing agreement with this site. But I don't think that's really an issue because it doesn't require student information. Like they don't have to log in with their Google school account. So there's no sharing of information between the student school accounts and GitEpic. Basically what you do is you give them a class code, and then they and then they create a name for themselves, and they can just put their first name too. So I'm fairly comfortable in terms of, having my students use from a safety and security standpoint. This is really great for pre-K to 6, although the books tend towards the lower end, and your older readers are going to have more trouble, I think, finding text that they like, and they would probably appreciate you helping them develop strategies for finding those books, or you creating reading lists for them and then using those reading lists. And then it can be useful for SPED students and ELL students as well. So this is what GitEpic looks like. And you can see it's a graphic interface. It is very easy to navigate through. And so I will show you, so you can create collections. And here are some of the collections that I have created and shared with my students. We'll see if it takes forever. So I'm planning a choice board on President's Day. So I'm, creating collections on President's Day. I have some collections on Martin Luther King Day and civil rights, some wordless picture books. So you can kind of see how you can create these different collections. And then I want to try and share also, you can, let's see, you can see the student data. I'm a little afraid to mess around with it too much because I don't want the whole system to crash here. But this is where you can see your student data. If you go to My Students and then go to daily reading or student logs, assignments, and there are quizzes. I don't utilize those. You can see different data on your students, and that can be helpful as a conversation starter to talk about what kids are reading and their reading practice. Okay. So I recently discovered this website as we were going into distance learning, and I was looking for places where my students could access books because I wasn't one of the librarians who was giving print books out. And so I really needed sites to link to my students digitally. So Unite for Literacy is a really interesting site. It's limited. There's about 400 books on there, fiction and nonfiction. Some of the books are in English. There are also Spanish books books in Spanish there. And what's cool about this site is that it's specifically geared towards including titles that are written for and about cultures that have typically been sort of disincluded from, most texts. And they talk about sort of like, I forget the term they use for it, but it's sort of like reading deserts or book deserts, if you're familiar with the term of a food desert, in the sense that people don't have access to books. And so it's geared towards really kind of filling a gap in the text world. There's no wait time for books because it does have that multiple simultaneous user model. It's very easy to navigate. All of the books are they are all picture books. So it's best for pre-K to 3rd grade, or SPED and ELL students could use it as well. And let me just show it to you. So this is what it looks like. And you will just click on a book and it would open up and you would flip the pages and read it. And there are some different ways that you can search. You can do a search using a search box, or you can search by category. You can search by language. You can look for books that have narration in them. So this is a great resource. Like I said, there's only 400 books on there, so it's not like an endless amount, but it's still high quality. And I like the illustrations. A lot of the illustrations are photographs, and there are also books that are not necessarily like produced by like publishing houses. They're more sort of authentic, like community created books. So that's kind of a cool feature. Okay, so this was a recent discovery, KidLitTV. So this is a website. It has video read alouds, and it also has like a lot more resources that kind of help to create like a community of readers and show, really engage students more deeply in reading. So you'll see author interviews, there's drawing tutorials, they have a podcast, there's crafts and activities. So this would be a good fit for pre-K to third grade, as well as teachers and parents. And I will show you what Kidlit TV looks like. This is that website. And you could, potentially set kids loose on here as long as you give them a little bit of instruction about, how to find the actual books, if that's what you want them to be doing, or as a resource for you as a teacher to use with your students or to share with your parents as well. You probably already know about Storyline Online. It's a very popular site. And what it does is it presents animated or video read alouds. And it's put on by the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. And so all of the people who are reading the books are professional actors, and they're wonderful at reading the books out loud. And it's very easy to navigate. I give it to my 5-year-old all the time. He knows the drill. He can choose any story that he like and he'll play it. What I like about it is that there's a lot of diversity in it, in terms of who is reading and what the stories are and stuff. And so again, what I like about that is it really shows kids like reading is for everyone. And there's all these different kinds of stories, and it can expose them to either they can see themselves in it, or they can learn about new cultures and see that everybody loves to read. And this is a good fit for pre-K to third grade. My third grader will still watch the videos with his 5-year-old brother, and the books are some of the books. Picture books, we often think of them as for very young readers, but picture books actually deal with high level content, and can be quite complex. And so I think, everybody loves a good story, and you can find ones on there that are appropriate for older readers as well, and older elementary. And so Storyline looks just like this. Sorry, I'm rushing. I've got more things to show you, and I'm going to run out of time soon. So this is Storyline Online. And then let's see if I can get through a few more really quickly. Actually what I want to get to, so Open Library, so I've been talking a lot about elementary. That's kind of what I have been able to find, and it's where I teach. So that's kind of, what I'm most familiar with. But I did want to say Open Library is an interesting site. You create a free account. You can borrow a book for up to 2 weeks, and then you can renew it. You can read it in your browser, or you can download it. And this one actually has titles that are K to 12. So for older students, there are titles that would be useful to them. They do have some high interest titles, and it's a graphic interface. So it looks like, no, not like that. Oh, I don't think I pulled this one up on a tab. But if you are a high school or middle school teacher, this might be one thing that you want to check out, because this would be a good fit for your students. Also, the International Children's Digital Library, what I like about this is that it has books in other languages. It can be very limited. It might have 5 books in a particular language, but if you have a student who doesn't speak English, 5 books is 5 more than you may have had otherwise. And so, this would be a good resource for you. The titles are a little bit obscure again, so it has sort of limited use. But I think it kind of, may be a help if you teach ELL. But also I was thinking, if you teach a second language, like if you're a Spanish teacher, you could use this even with your high school students. If they're beginning to learn Spanish, they could start to read Spanish books, or books in Spanish, and it's useful that they're written for younger children, because then they'll be able to read it more effectively. Thank you. Okay, 5 more minutes. I have just a few more to get through here, I think. I think actually this might be my last one. I have one more. Okay, so whoops. YouTube is a really great source. And I want to point out just a few of my favorite channels. Brightly Storytime, great read alouds. AHEV Library has high quality read alouds as well. And then Storytime at Ani's house has pretty high quality read alouds. Now, I recently discovered there's this thing called BookTube, which I never knew about, but there's this whole like world of readers and like book bloggers on YouTube. And they're geared towards, you know, there's more adult ones, there's more kids ones, but there's teens too, and young adult readers who have them. And as I was looking through different different ones, two of my favorites were Sandy Reads a Lot and Jessie the Reader. So if you're a high school teacher or you serve high school readers, I would really encourage them to go and check out some of these sort of book bloggers, and it will help to inspire and inform their own reading practice. And then really briefly, there is also Ebooks, and this you can get a 1-year subscription for free as a teacher. And these are really great, well done animated read alouds. I'm not sure how much a subscription costs. It says right there, it's $50 a year. So after that 1-year subscription, if you find that you're using it a lot and your students really love it, you know, you could extend it with that $50 a year subscription. Okay, that's it. And we don't have too much time for questions, about 4 minutes, but I would like to, you know, open it up and, you know, I'm happy to answer questions. No questions? Okay, that's fine. And then I really appreciate getting to talk about all these great sources. Reading is just my favorite thing to do. And I think it's also just such a valuable activity for our students for so many reasons. And any way we can get our kids connected to books and to reading is so important. You can find me at this email address, and at Instagram, I am at aloha_librarian. And then I am going to stop sharing, and I will put the link to this slideshow into the chat box. It does have the links to all the resources I mentioned. So if you would like to have access to those, that would be a great way. So I'm going to drop that into the chat right now, if I can find the chat.
I was just about to ask that. Thank you so much. Let's give a warm mahalo to Kaylee Ramirez and for everyone's participation. We hope you found this session helpful and made some valuable connections. I know I did. My students love audiobooks, so I play that during our lunch times, especially Story Night Online. Please help us complete the evaluation, which I'm going to put on the chat after Caitlin's link. It'll be available after the whole event. So you'll be entered to win one of $25 Starbucks gift cards. So let me put it in now before I forget. There's a link. And we again would like to say thank you to the Augustine Educational Foundation and Sacred Hearts Academy. Much mahalo for attending this session, and we hope you enjoy the other upcoming sessions. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you. And stop recording.